رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. I hope all of you are fine and doing well. स्टार्ट करते हैं आज की अच्छी बात से। सबसे पहले आप लोगों के साथ कुरान पाक की एक आयत शेयर करना चाहूँगी जिसका तर्जुमा कुछ इस तरह से है। इंसान के लिए वही कुछ है जिसकी वो खुद कोशिश करता है। तो डियर स्टूडेंट्स, हमें कोशिश करनी चाहिए कि हम अच्छा काम करें, क्योंकि जिस चीज़ के लिए हम कोशिश करते हैं वही चीज़ हमें मिलती है। मेहनत के बगैर हम कुछ भी हासिल नहीं कर सकते। तो अगर हम अपनी मंजिल तक पहुंचना चाहते हैं तो हमें उसके लिए कोशिश करनी है ताकि हमारी मंजिल तक का जो सफ़र है वो आसान हो सके। आज के लिए जो हदीस आप लोगों के साथ शेयर करना चाहूँगी वो कुछ इस तरह से है। रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने इरशाद फरमाया, रोज़ेदार को दो खुशियाँ हासिल होती हैं। एक उस वक्त जब वो अफ्तार करता है तो खुशी महसूस करता है, और दूसरी जब वो अपने रब से मुलाकात करेगा तो रोज़े का सवाब देखकर खुश हो जाएगा। डियर स्टूडेंट्स, इस हदीस से जो बात हमें पता चलती है वो ये है कि रोज़ा रखना हमारे लिए बहुत अहमियत रखता है, क्योंकि जो रोज़ेदार होता है उसको एक खुशी उस वक्त मिलती है जब वो अफ्तार कर रहा होता है, और दूसरी खुशी उसके लिए आखिरत के लिए जो है वो संभाल ली जाती है, और वो उसको तब मिलेगी जब वो अपने रब से मुलाकात करेगा। तो कितना ही अच्छा हो कि हम रोज़ा रखने की आदत को अपना लें। Now dear students, let us start today's lecture. Today we will move on to the lecture number 3 of unit 2, that is vectors and equilibrium. And in today's lecture, we will discuss the topic 2.5, that is about the resolution of vectors. Now the dear students, the resolution of the vectors means that resolving a vector into its component. It means the process of splitting a vector into two or more than two vectors is known as the resolution of a vector. And the vectors that are obtained are known as the component of the vector, such as in this case, we have splitted the vector A into x and y component. So ax and ay are the two components of this vector A. And if the components of the vectors are perpendicular to each other, it means if fx and ax and ay are making an angle of 90 degrees, then these components are known as the rectangular components of the vector. Now consider the vector A in the Cartesian coordinate system represented by the line ONC, and it is making an angle theta in the figure. So now we will draw the perpendicular components of this vector A from the point C on the x-axis and y-axis, which meets at the point B and D on the x and y-axis respectively. So now if we put an arrowhead on them, they will show the direction of these components. So we get the two components of the vector A as ax along the x-axis, and the other vector is ay, and this component is along the y-axis. And these two vectors are called the rectangular components of the vector A. And these vectors can be represented by the addition of the rectangular component will be equal to the vector itself. Now, how we get this equation? Now, dear students, if you remember the process of the vector addition by the head to tail rule, so we are just moving this y component along the sides C, B, so that it is going to make the vector addition. So we are going to place the tail of the vector ay onto the head of the vector ax. So by adding this, we get the resultant vector a. So it means if we add ax to ay, then we get the vector a itself. And also, if we want to write down this equation in terms of the magnitude and the direction, then this vector A will be equal to the magnitude of the component along the x-axis and its unit vector, which is I hat, plus the magnitude of the vector along the y-axis into the unit vector, which is j hat. So this will be the equation which is used to represent the rectangular components of a vector. Now we will see how to represent the components of a vector in terms of a vector. So for this purpose, we will consider a right angle triangle named as OP and Q, such that in this case the vector F is resolved into its perpendicular component such that Fx, which is horizontal component, and Fy, which is vertical component of this vector F. So dear students, इस right angle triangle में अगर हम trigonometric ratios को use करें तो हम इन components को vector की form में जो है वो write down कर सकते हैं. तो सबसे पहले तो मैं आप लोगों के साथ एक simple सा method share करूंगी जिसके अकॉर्डिंग हम ट्रिग्नोमेट्रिक रेशियोज को इजीली जो है वो याद रख सकते हैं. और वो लाइन जो हमें याद रखनी है वो क्या है? वो लाइन कुछ इस तरह से है, सम पीपल हैव कर्ली ब्राउन हेयर थ्रू प्रॉपर ब्रश. So the line is, some people have curly brown hair through proper brush. So now dear students, now from this line how we can write down the trigonometric ratios? It is quite simple. Some people have, some, S is for sine theta, P is for perpendicular, have, H is for hypotenuse. Then curly brown hair, C is for cos theta, B is for base, and H is for again hypotenuse. While through proper brush, T is for tan theta, P is for perpendicular, and B is for base. So with the help of this line, we can easily write down the trigonometric ratios. Now, to write down the trigonometric ratios of this equation, we can write down as sine theta will be equals to perpendicular, while the perpendicular side is y component, so Fy, and its hypotenuse side is F vector itself. So Fy over F. So from this equation, we get the component of the vector along the y-axis. Fy will be equals to F sine of theta. Now, the cos component, cos theta will be equals to base over hypotenuse, while the base is x component. So Fx over F, and from this equation we get Fx is equals to F cos of theta. तो डियर स्टूडेंट्स, हम x कंपोनेंट को जो है वो इक्वल लिख सकते हैं f cos थीटा के, और जो y कंपोनेंट है fy जो है वो इक्वल हो जाएगा हमारे पास f sin of theta के. So by substituting these value into the equation of the vector, then it will be equal to, so if in general we write F force is equals to Fx plus Fy, and it also equals to Fx into unit vector I plus Fy into unit vector j. So from this equation, this vector force F will be equals to F cos of theta into unit vector I plus F sine of theta into unit vector j. And from the right angle triangle, if we use the Pythagoras theorem, then we can be able to find out the magnitude of this vector f. And how we can find out the magnitude of this vector f? According to the Pythagoras theorem, the square of the hypotenuse side is equal to the square of the base plus the square of the perpendicular side, while the hypotenuse is f square and the base is fx square plus fy square, or the magnitude of this vector f is equal to the square root of fx square plus the square of fy. So the magnitude of the vector cannot be determined if the values of the magnitude of the components are known. And to find out the direction, we use the tan ratio, while the tan ratio is equals to perpendicular over base. So tan theta will be equals to fy over fx, or we can say that the theta will be equals to tangent inverse fy by f of x. So these are some of the equations by which we can be able to find out the direction, we can be able to find out the magnitude of the vector, even we can resolve the vector into its perpendicular component or into its rectangular component. And if we want to write down the equation of the magnitude in the three-dimensional space, so in the three-dimensional space vector, it is represented as fx square plus fy square plus fz square, or in general we can simply write down as a is equal to the square root of ax square plus ay square plus az square, where this vector a could be any vector of the any physical quantity. So dear students, that is all from this topic. Your homework for today is question number 1 is determine the components of the force acting upon Fido as the 60 Newton tension force acts upward and rightward on Fido at an angle of 40 degrees. So for this question, you have to find out the components of the force that is acting upon the Fido, while the magnitude of the vector and its direction is given. Question number 2 is write 50 Newton east and 17 Newton south in the component form. You have to write down this in the equation form in terms of the rectangular components. Question number 3 is the velocity of a particle is 4I plus 3j. Determine its magnitude and the direction. Vector is given, and from this vector you have to find out its magnitude and the direction. This is the end of today's lecture. Thank you so much. I hope all of you have enjoyed today's lecture. For any kind of queries, you can write your question in the comment section. See you in the next lecture with a new topic. Till then, take care and Allah Hafiz.